Welcome to the Module 3 lecture. In Module 1, we were introduced to social media and its role in branding and strategic communication. Last week, we focused on creating a social media strategy using goals, smart objectives, KPIs, tactics, and channels. This week, we're going to build on that foundation by looking at paid, owned, earned, and shared media and how they work together as part of an effective social media strategy. In this lecture, we'll define paid, owned, earned, and shared media and look at the benefits and challenges associated with each. We'll also clarify where influencer and creator marketing fit within this framework and examine how the different media types can work together. As we go through the lecture, continue thinking about what we discussed last week because your goals, audience, budget, and KPIs should ultimately guide the media mix you select. Let's begin with paid media. Paid media is essentially any placement, exposure, or reach that your organization pays for. Traditionally, this included television, radio, and print advertising. Today, it also includes paid social ads, paid search, display advertising, sponsored content, and paid creator partnerships. The bottom line is that you're paying to reach an audience, whether your goal is to increase awareness, generate traffic, improve engagement, or drive conversions. Paid media has several advantages. It works relatively quickly, can be scaled, and allows you to target very specific audiences. You also have control over how much you're spending, and digital advertising gives us strong measurement capabilities. However, paid media requires a budget, audiences may be less receptive to advertising, and performance requires ongoing testing and optimization. Another important consideration is that once you stop paying, that additional exposure generally stops as well. Owned media refers to content that you create and distribute through channels your organization controls. This includes your website, blog, email, app, and your brand's social media accounts. Owned media is important because it allows you to establish your brand voice, publish content consistently, develop long term relationships with your audience, and create content assets that can support the rest of your media strategy. One of the biggest advantages of owned media is control. You control the message and the content you publish, and you're also building assets that can provide long term value to the organization. However, I want to make an important distinction here. While you control what you publish on your social media accounts, you do not control how the platform distributes that content. Algorithms still affect who sees your post. So, owned media gives you greater control over content, but it does not guarantee reach. Earned media, on the other hand, refers to external attention or promotion that your brand receives organically. This might include news coverage, customer reviews, social media mentions, blog coverage, or an organic mention from a creator. Unlike paid media, the organization isn't purchasing the placement. And unlike owned media, the organization doesn't control the channel or the message. Earned media can be particularly valuable because it provides third party exposure and can strengthen the credibility of your brand. But what are the benefits and challenges of earned media? The third party nature of earned media is one of its greatest strengths. When other people talk positively about your organization, it can expand awareness, strengthen reputation, and potentially influence purchasing decisions. However, earned media comes with an important trade off. You cannot fully control it. You also cannot guarantee that the conversation will be positive. This is why organizations need to monitor earned media and be prepared to respond when necessary. Here's an important distinction that I want you to remember. Influencer content is not automatically earned media. If your organization compensates a creator to promote your brand or product, that is paid media. If a creator independently talks about, reviews, or recommends your product without being paid for that placement, that can be considered earned media. So when you're trying to classify influencer content, ask yourself whether the exposure was purchased or earned organically. Traditionally, we have talked about three categories: paid, owned, and earned media. But social media has complicated those boundaries because audiences now actively participate in distributing and shaping content. The PESO model adds a fourth category: shared media. We now have paid, earned, shared, and owned. Shared media allows us to account more directly for the conversations and participation that occur around brands in social media. Shared media includes content and conversations that are distributed through audience and community participation. Think about reposts, shares, collaborative posts, employee advocacy, user participation, and conversations happening around a brand. The organization may initiate the content or encourage participation, but the community helps determine how far that message travels and sometimes even what the message becomes. That's what makes shared media particularly important in today's social media environment. But how does the media mix work together? The key is not to think about these four categories as completely separate. They should reinforce one another. For example, you might create a video as owned content, use paid advertising to extend its reach, encourage audiences to share and discuss it, and ultimately gain organic media and creator attention. That's where earned media comes in. The strongest strategy integrates these different forms of media rather than allowing them to operate in silos. How can we create opportunities for earned media? I recommend that you start with your goals and your audience. Understand what your audience is reading, watching, searching for, and talking about. Then identify the specific media outlets, creators, and communities that make sense for your brand. Your pitch or story also needs to be timely, relevant, and interesting enough to warrant attention. The important thing to remember is that high quality content can create opportunities for earned media, but it cannot guarantee it. Another thing I want you to remember is that it's important to do PR for your PR. In one of our earlier lectures, I mentioned that PR stands for public relations. If your brand receives positive media coverage, a strong review, or an organic creator mention, don't assume that everyone saw it. Capture that earned media and reshare it through your own channels. You might feature it on your social media accounts, website, or email. In some situations, You may even use paid media to amplify particularly strong earned content. So, which media type is right for your brand? The truth is, it depends. There isn't one media mix that works for every organization. You need to consider your goals, your target audience, your budget, your available resources, how quickly you need results, and how you plan to measure success. Owned media will often provide an important foundation, but paid, earned, and shared media can help extend your reach and strengthen the overall strategy. Just as we discussed with KPIs in Module 2, measurement needs to align with what you're trying to accomplish. With paid media, we might examine cost per click, conversions, customer acquisition cost, or return on ad spend. For owned media, we may look at traffic, audience growth, reach, or engagement. Earned media might be measured through mentions, sentiment, share of voice, or media coverage. And for shared media, we might examine shares, post, participation, community engagement, and advocacy. The important thing is to select the metrics that actually relate to your goals. We also need to briefly consider where AI fits within the media mix. In paid media, AI can support targeting, creative testing, and optimization. With owned media, it can assist with content ideation, personalization, optimization, and reporting. And across earned and shared media, AI can help organizations with social listening, sentiment analysis, trend detection, and monitoring conversations. But as we've discussed before, AI is a tool. Strategic decisions still require human judgment, context, and an understanding of the brand and its audience. Now, I want you to use this table as a resource, particularly as you work through the material and your assignment for this module. It brings the four media types together and provides a definition, examples, primary benefit, and primary challenge of each. One thing to keep in mind is that these categories can sometimes overlap. When you're unsure how to classify something, ask yourself three questions. Who paid for it? Who controls the channel or content? And who is creating or distributing the message? Those questions will usually help you determine where it belongs. So, in the wrap up, I want to reinforce that you need a strategy if you want to use social media effectively. Paid, earned, shared, and owned media should work together to support the goals you've established. But the specific combination you use will depend on your brand, your target audience, your goals, your budget, and the context in which you're communicating. There is no universal formula. The important thing is that every decision you make should have a strategic reason behind it.